The Ivy Leader Project sends 28 HBA, MBA, and PhD students abroad each year to teach business. These interviews with alumni show the impact the project has had on developing business leaders who care about the health and prosperity of the societies in which they operate.
Well, because I think the fundamental mission of Leader I see as twofold. First, arming people in different parts of the world with skills that they wouldn't have access to.
Leader really, everything in Eastern Europe is different in terms of their approach to everything. Right. And so you're faced with, in every second, right, a different challenge related to understanding different perspectives, different approaches, which solidifies everything that you're taught at IB. Mm-hmm.
Now what we're doing is we're giving these guys, giving our teachers, our students a chance to really explore what they know about business, the common sense aspects of business, really right. Bringing in, I could teach you about a balance sheet, or I can really listen to you. I can help you solve a problem. I can bring a different perspective to the table you may not have had. And I think that challenges them, to me, in a much better way. Because it's the application, it's not just, regurgitating. Now it's the application. I've learned this in accounting, I've learned this in operations, I've learned this in marketing. But I'm going to now help you to apply that. And that's, to me, a much bigger value add.
Well, I think the skills that I think that the Leader Project gives to people is more of a way of thinking. Okay. So it's looking at projects in a very different way than they may have previously, and it's the ability to ask questions that they may not have thought of earlier, which is why the case-based method that we take from Ivy, bring to the Leader Project and to these countries internationally is so valuable, because it's all about testing the assumptions that we have going into problems and hearing problems from a different point of view that our colleagues may have, that our instructors may have, and that others, even as we talk to people in our broader community, may have. And I think of the things that I've done since I've left Ivy. On my maternity leave, I started a small business. I've led my community through a very challenging process with our local government. On a daily basis, I interact with case teams and clients that are struggling with problems they're facing, and I help them work through that.
Or what did you derive from the Leader Project as a learning experience?
I think the first thing is that Leader takes everything that you learned at Ivy and then puts it on its head and challenges you that much more. So instead of being the receiver, the taker of information, as you are while you're at Ivy, you're soaking all of this great knowledge in, you're suddenly then put in the professor's seat, where you actually have to know the material so well that you can actually facilitate a discussion on it. So It's really just taking those skills to the next level. So when you think about having the confidence to do that, Ivy really prepared me.
How did the Leader Project help you develop an understanding or a belief for how business leaders should be acting?
In a couple of ways. The first experience that I'll reflect on is when I was in Nizhny Tagil in 2006 as a leader teacher. There was, it's a fairly small town, so people in town start to hear that the Canadians are back. Yeah. And you start having people come up to you and try to speak English. And one woman came up who had been through the Leader program 4 or 5 years earlier, so a significant amount of time. And in her purse, she had a photo album. And there were pictures of her with her teachers and the different classmates she had. And so I was shocked that this experience was that influential on her, that she still kept these photos with her and they were that meaningful. And B, it reminded me of the important role that leaders play and leaderites play. So whether you're a leader teacher or whether you're a leader in the business community, people are looking to you. And so what you say and how you act is incredibly influential on all of those around you. So I think what Leader did for me is it reminded me that whether you're a business leader, a community leader, a government leader, it's about people. And it's about the people that you have the opportunity to influence and make a difference with. And it's an opportunity, and it's also an obligation. And you need to fulfill both of those elements in the right way so that you're having a positive impact.
like our business would be dead if I went into every situation with here is the right answer, right? Like there would be no chance. And so I think the only reason why we've been able to succeed is because myself and my business partner, who's also an Ivy grad, I think we get that there are many different perspectives, and if we try to enforce our own, our business just wouldn't grow. Leader was an important part of the overall Ivy experience for me, and I think for anyone who does Leader, it is. And I think what it does is it ties together. Ivy's case study method, I think, is designed to encourage people to understand other people's points of view, to really encourage openness and an interest in different ideas, right? Much different from your own. And Leader really ties that together, because when you're at Ivy, the differences aren't, there aren't chasms. There's sort of, you believe something, I believe something else, but there's at least a common understanding.
Yeah.
When you go to Eastern Europe and talk about entrepreneurial life and how do you start a new business and what's it like for you to live, after the wall came down, and what are your parents? I mean, it's just like there are massive gaps, and you really need to work to understand, to feel what they're talking about, and for them to feel what you're talking about. There's just huge differences.
But what are those gaps? Do you have a story of a time where you realized that this really was fundamentally a different way of thinking?
The story that I remember that really brought that home was we were teaching at this entrepreneurial setting in the middle of Ukraine. So it was 16 entrepreneurs had come together in what was actually a very productive farm. Right? Okay. It used to be a state-owned farm, and now is owned by someone who I guess knew someone at the state, which is kind of how it worked.
Right.
But so we're at this farm, and we were talking about income statements. And I was teaching that day. We're talking about kind of income statements, balance sheets, and what the students were doing were preparing income statements and balance sheets for their idea. And so this one student came up and presented, and he said, and he worked through his income statement. Here's my revenue, here's my labor costs, my cost of goods, my roof, and my electrical bills. And I thought, he said, that was great.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to talk about is kind of capital purchases versus, stuff that would go on your income statement. So your roof, right, you'd put on your balance sheet, right, and then you would expense a certain amount of that roof, however long you want it to last.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he's like, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but I have to pay this amount every year. And I said, okay, you may want to look for a better roofer, right? Or at least one who offered some kind of warranty.
Yeah.
And he explained to me that what he meant was what they call a roof is protection money, right? So like the roof over the business, right, that allows them to operate. So he has to pay the local mafia 20%. He had to pay 20% of his business, right?
Yeah.
And he was putting that in his income statement as a budgetary item, right? So here I am, like I'm going to teach you about balance sheets, right? And he has to deal with this mob guy who comes in at once. So it's like that really brought home to me that we had to change the way we talked to them, right? We had to change what we were talking to them about, because the issues that they were dealing with were so different than the issues that we would deal with back home. And it was incredible learning, right? Because what that does is it makes you think about every situation, right? Like, do you really understand where the other person's coming from? Do you really understand what their situation is? And I think Ivy tries to do that with the case study method, and I think Leader is a great, almost finishing, graduating, like graduate school from that, where it just brings it all the way home.
What are the opportunities out there for Leader Project?
I think, to be honest, this is much more exciting. Where we've shifted the program as an advisory board, but more importantly, where the EDs told us they wanted it to go. I mean, it is a student-led program, and the advisory board is just there to really listen and help. Where we've shifted it now has unlimited potential. If you think about the way that the world is changing, we can now bring this business help, the ability to not only take the basic level knowledge into people, but also help them fundamentally change a project or a business that they're working on. That can go anywhere. That can go to Canada's north. That can go into the back mountains of Afghanistan or Pakistan or any other country in the world. It can go to rural areas in Africa and suburban areas in Africa. Almost anywhere in the world, you will find somebody with an entrepreneurial drive, somebody who's saying, you know what, I have a better way of doing it, and I can market, I can sell it, I can do this. And that drive to succeed, that drive to make money, and that drive to kind of create something better around them. You know, entrepreneurs aren't just driven by how am I going to make money off of this. Quite often they're driven by, you know, how do I make this better? How do I make this process, these people, how do I better somebody's lives? An Ivy grad can go into that as a member of Leader and really change. I mean, it's fundamental change in those places when somebody brings very practical business knowledge to somebody else and says, here, let me help you with that. Let me give you a different perspective on that. You know, 1 month with somebody who's really focused on you and your business and what you don't know and trying to help you with that can change your life drastically. And then that, as we know, one of the neat things about business, kind of like schools, but you know, when you help somebody change with a business, you begin to help them, then you help their family, you help the community around them that the business is serving, and it just keeps spreading out. So there's so much potential with Leader to really make our little tiny drop in the bucket just makes amazing changes in the world. There is something about equipping somebody with the basic tools to provide a livelihood and make a community better through business that fundamentally changes the world. And therefore, what I look for now in a good business leader is somebody who understands that. When I look at a good business leader, I'm looking for not just how is this person putting money in the pockets of shareholders every day, but how does this person understand that what he or she does at the top has a profound impact on their employees, on their shareholders, on the customers, on the community at large. And I think going abroad reinforces that, because when you see what an impact just spending an hour with an aspiring business owner can do, you realize that you have a greater obligation than just patting your own pocket at the end of the day.